You know, last year before my talk, someone asked a question for the previous speaker, and my talk was geared towards exactly answering that question. So this time, again, you asked how to align payments, and guess what? Our talk is going to address just that. So perfect timing. So quick poll. How many of you know what an APM is? Raise your hand. That's exactly what I usually encounter in my endeavors when I travel across the country. So it's an alternative payment model. And as we all know, if you ask everybody that's doing telehealth, the major reason why they're frustrated, like you already referenced today, is how are we going to get paid for it or reimbursed by it, right? So I'm going to try to challenge you to think out of the box. And although for the typical face-to-face services, everybody is scared of APMs and doesn't want them and perceives them as something imposed by CMS, I'm going to try to flip all that around and convince you that you want to be involved in an APM and to do telehealth. It could be a major paradigm shift. So one quick disclaimer, I don't have any financial conflicts of interest. And the second disclaimer is, although when you look at what I do every day, it's pure analytics and value-based contracting. I call it direct combat every day because it's tough. But at heart, I'm a healthcare futurist. So as much as I would have liked to give you a talk about how your Netflix subscription is going to include telehealth, or how next time you go to the gym you're going to have a free telehealth consultation, we still have to deal with the realities of healthcare at this time. So might be a little dry for some of you, but if you bear with me, the goal today is to kind of make you think about this in a different way, ask important questions, and then give you a little roadmap, just a few quick tips, if you choose to do this with payers, how to approach it. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about MEDNAX. I know we're running short, but we're a healthcare solutions company. Our core business is obviously to provide physician services, particularly in the acute care space, heavily, predominantly in the pediatric space. We have the most NICUs in the country, and I think one stat that usually attracts a lot of attention is that every single day we kind of touch about a quarter of the babies born in the United States, so that's a lot. We also provide anesthesia and radiology services in addition to all the pediatric subspecialties. Out of the 3 portfolio companies that we have, I think the one relevant today is VRAD. We're offering teleradiology services across the country. And again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just want to give you a flavor of why I have a pretty nice, comprehensive learning experience. We deal with a lot of partners across 39 states, and I'm pretty good at listening when I don't talk on stage. And I can tell you, over the past year, I have observed 3 major changes. One is physicians are not as scared of telehealth as they used to be. So it used to be that we had 1 champion, 2 champions, and every other physician in the group was still very hesitant or didn't even want to hear about telehealth. And I see much more critical mass there, and I think that's good for us. The second thing is I don't hear as much from healthcare executives. Remember, we're in several hundred facilities, and I meet with several, like double-digit kind of per week. I used to hear a lot of, telehealth, and this kind of gesture, and very dismissive attitudes. Now, I don't hear any more statements about the value of telehealth from a clinical perspective, but I think it's clear that everybody is still struggling with how to make it work from a legislative point of view and from a reimbursement point of view. So now the most frequent question is, okay, you got me, I want to do it, how are we going to get paid for it? And I think that's why this talk is maybe good for all of us to think about. So just one quick element about value-based care. I'm not going to read all the slides, but what I would like to point out, for the first time, commercial payers are leading in terms of value-based dollars tied in contracts. It used to be CMS. And I think that's good for us. We can approach private health plans and start to think about how can we craft these joint kind of relationships so that it's a win-win for everybody. Hopefully, most importantly, for the patient, right? But there are ways to craft programs completely differently than we've ever thought about it before, so that we can have this shift and this critical mass and improve acceptance rate across the spectrum. I think the other part that I wanted to highlight here is, although last year I showed similar stats, the adoption rate for employer health plan offered telehealth was 3%. So you could say, if you're an optimist, yay, we're at 8%. I think it's pathetically low, right? If so many health employers offer telehealth, why is it not? And our great keynote speaker this morning showed us why. Patient engagement is not at the forefront. They're just offering it, and if it's a tiny, lower footnote there in your contract, you don't even know. As a matter of fact, if you ask a lot of people, did you know that you had telehealth services? Most of them say, I had no clue, no one told me, right? So what if tomorrow it would be front and center and everybody would offer it to you, right? So the other part that, the other part that I think is interesting to think about is that value-based care is like an ecosystem. I hear this all the time, us, them, we can win, they can lose. Don't think about it like that. Think about it that every action you do, if you do value-based care, will get back to you some way. So you better design the model smart. And if you think about the patient and all the key players in the system or in the ecosystem, then it will work, and you'll have a successful program that you can scale, that will give you long and short-term outcomes, right? And everybody will be able to cover their costs. You don't want anybody to lose because it's not going to be sustainable. So I think telehealth fits very nicely in this ecosystem, but we've approached it the wrong way. So if we don't want to continue the same mistakes we've seen in the day-to-day clinical services over the past 50 years, right? You try to work on the fee-for-service and add more CPT codes and then try to come up with a million metrics, and then after 20-something years try to develop these APMs to change to value-based care. I don't think that's worth it. What we can do is learn from all that and go straight to the lessons learned, which is do an APM from the beginning. How can you craft these models from the beginning where telehealth, instead of the thing that nobody wants and that we have to beg for fee-for-service changes, becomes the mandatory thing that everybody has to do. Let's see how things change then, right? So again, here, all of you know this. I'm gonna, again, pretend I'm an optimist and say, wow, so many dollars thrown into the system. It's amazing, we're so happy. If you're a pessimist, you say, all these dollars spent and we still only have low adoption rate, that just doesn't make sense. There's so many other things in society where we're investing almost nothing and everybody signs up for it. Look at Facebook or Twitter. Are we forcing people? Are we doing marketing for that? No, they sign up on their own, right? So how can we get to that point? And then in terms of telehealth drivers and influencers, we've talked about them, and there are many speakers who are going to talk, so I'm going to only focus on the value-based contracting. I think if you do a contract, if you design it in a smart way, and I'm talking not only about design in terms of engagement, but design it as a business model the smart way, listen to the pain points that the payers have, try to understand also the pain points that hospitals have, that providers have, that are not always happy or maybe are burned out or they feel threatened because they don't understand how telehealth can be an aid and a tool and a method to make their life much better and their schedules better. If you take all those things into consideration, you can actually craft some very successful models. It just takes a little time and a different approach. So if you really want to be serious about doing an alternative payment model and considering telehealth one of them, these are some of the questions you want to ask yourself real quick. And again, what I'm going to focus on today is how do you design one and how would we measure success? And then if anybody's interested, I can always communicate with you about details for all other points because they take longer. So just a reminder for those of you that are still not sure. An alternative payment model is the pathway that gets you from fee-for-service to that other reimbursement method that's not only pure fee-for-service. Okay? And you can find a million other definitions, but this is an easy one to remember. And if you look at CMS, it's very easy, right? They tie a specific amount of healthcare dollars for CMS purposes, right? So that you can show the value of your care. For health plan, commercial health plans, it's going to be the same thing, just that they have much more freedom in terms of how much percent to allocate in an APM. And that's your opportunity. You also have much more freedom with commercial health plans to design it any way you want. Whatever criteria you believe as a provider or a healthcare system, or the combination of thereof, that would make sense. And that's where the data analytics comes in, right? And then you hear about advanced APMs all the time. All the different, I mean, you're going to find volumes written, but simple cheat sheet is just the amount of dollars tied to it and the fact that you need a certified EHR. The rest is solvable. If you remember these two things, you can always tell anybody what's an advanced APM. And then I thought this white paper was really good. It's published in 2017. They haven't updated it, but it's still very valid. So I think if you're really interested in APMs, I can strongly recommend this. And it will spark a lot of thinking, hopefully, about, hey, if I answer every single one of these questions, I can answer yes, telehealth is an APM already. We just haven't thought about it like that. And then, so why do I think that we could have telehealth as the next generation APM? Well, I'll give you some of my thoughts. The pros are that you attack the bull by the horns from the beginning. You find a sustainable reimbursement model. So for instance, for health plans, let's just take one example. It could be a per member per month. Everybody has telehealth. But as providers and healthcare systems, we need to provide telehealth, otherwise we pay penalties or we lose even regular fee-for-service reimbursement. So you'll see how it all changes. Everybody will fight now to deliver telehealth. Most healthcare systems have even already invested in telehealth technology, are just scared or not sure how to deploy it to their other service lines, or are not sure if they're going to get reimbursed for other service lines. I can't tell you how many out of the hundreds of hospitals I'm aware of that have telehealth and just deploy it for dermatology or stroke. They have the equipment, they invested in it, it's just because they don't think that everything else will get reimbursed because of the fee-for-service model that they don't deploy it appropriately to all their other service lines. So the cons would be that it takes a little bit more work to listen to the payers, to see also what are their pressure points. You have to do advanced analytics to understand exactly what you need to do. And then craft the metrics that are tying the dollars in that plan exactly to meet everybody's needs in that alternative payment model. So again, when you look at all the things we know that are important in the healthcare industry right now that are bugging everybody, if you will, you can see them all there, right? High-risk patients are not being treated accordingly. There's a mismatch between where patients need services and where we have enough providers. We have still unnecessary care, either escalations of care or unnecessary readmissions or unnecessary ER visits. Imagine if all that would be flipped, and overnight, you would have telehealth take care of all those things. So you would have to have, in order to have an ER admission or an inpatient admission, a telehealth consult first, right? Imagine that all that would shift and it would be completely opposite than now. Then our lives could be much easier and we would have less gray hair, right? How are we with time? We're finished. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Maybe I have time for one question.
None.
When you talk about the analytic, what kind of data point you are looking at to determine telehealth versus the fee-for-service when they toward APM?
So from a payer, great question actually. 2 years worth of retro trend for payer data is absolutely a must, and try to understand how they look at episodes of care and how they assess costs per beneficiary, because guess what? Cost per beneficiary from a payer point of view will not match the way I look at it when I'm in a hospital setting for the same beneficiary, and it will not match when I look at it from a provider point of view, or if I'm the patient, right? My patient balance billing is different. So when we say total cost of care, you have to be very careful what that really means from each of those stakeholders' perspectives. So 2 years minimum retro data for payer. For hospitals, same thing. What I strongly recommend are a must are transfer logs for the last 2 years by diagnosis, CPT, and DRG. You want to know exactly what cost that hospital system dollars, where they're losing, bleeding dollars, because that's how you want to design your telehealth intervention. The other very important data points there are adverse events, sentinel events, again, by diagnosis CPT code, and again, it will give you exactly what you need to focus on. The other part, escalations of care. Every hospital has this data set. And you look at escalations of care that required unexpected admission to any CCU, ICU, whatever escalation of care you have in your healthcare system. And that, again, will give you very nice interventions. Also, no-show rates, very important. And your high-risk patients that have at least X amount of admissions per year. And each healthcare system knows what is your threshold, 3, 5, whatever you think is important for your healthcare system, depending how large you are. And if you start with that, you'll have more than what you ever need to work with. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Ingrid.